Is Morrowind really that great of a game? That question has been stuck in my head for a long time. I first fell in love with the Elder Scrolls series through Oblivion and then of course Skyrim, but somehow I never touched Morrowind. So I finally decided to change that. The funny thing is, I had no idea what to expect. I'd never watched any gameplay, never read guides or tips, and I'd never even talked to anyone who really knew the game. The only thing I'd heard was that unlike Skyrim, Morrowind doesn't have level scaling, and that was basically it. So I went in blind, and in this video I want to share my experience of my very first 10 hours in Morrowind. I've actually already played 60 hours, but the video would be insanely long if I tried to cover all of that. I was making notes as I played and even printed out a map where I marked the places I visited because it quickly became clear this game is for real adventurers. You don't get quest markers or a handy compass to point you everywhere, and honestly, I love that. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, let's start from the beginning. So I woke up on a boat with some stranger nearby. And yeah, his voice was a bit creepy.
You were dreaming.
But you know, it could have been worse. I could have woken up in a prison or in a carriage heading to a place where... So I really can't complain. I typed my name and right away a guard took me up onto the deck. I had no idea who I was or where I came from. Even the guard didn't know. Before I could go any further, I had to pick my race and appearance. Usually, when I play Skyrim, I go for a hunter type character, but this time I thought, why not try something completely different? A new game, a new experience, let's be a mage. I checked out all the races and their bonuses, and of course the Breton stood out. That was the simple part. Next came picking a face. Thanks to a mod I installed, there were a few more options than in vanilla Morrowind, but let's just say these faces weren't exactly the most beautiful I've ever seen. Not a big deal for me, I don't pay too much attention to graphics anyway, says the girl who installed a few mods to make the graphics better. I did it for you, of course, so you'd have a more enjoyable view. At least that's what I'm telling myself. And speaking of mods, I only installed ones that improve the graphics, no additional content, since I wanted to experience the original game. Okay, so after spending way too much time scrolling through all faces, I finally settled on a look. Then I crossed the bridge and stepped into the building. Next up was choosing my class, and this part really caught me off guard. You can actually take a quiz, and at the end it suggests the perfect class for you. Naturally, I tried it and it told me I should be a rogue. Not sure if I should be proud of that. Still, I wanted to play as a mage, so I looked through all the classes. Mage and sorcerer were the obvious picks. I thought about playing a battle mage for a moment, but I've never really focused on magic in Elder Scrolls before, so relying only on spells seemed the most interesting to me. I'd already played as a warrior, using different weapons in Oblivion and Skyrim. The sorcerer's endurance attribute and weapon skills didn't feel very mage-like, more like a battle mage, so in the end, mage seemed like the only logical choice. But you know how it is, I created my own class. Who could create a perfectly balanced character better than me, right? I had no idea how leveling worked in this game. As I mentioned before, I knew nothing, no tutorials, no guides, nothing. So yeah, I knew I'd probably mess things up and maybe other things later in the game too. Don't be surprised if I do something a bit illogical, but honestly, playing blind is way more fun than following guides. Figuring out how the world works and solving problems as they come, that's the part I love most in games. For attributes, I picked intelligence and willpower, the obvious mage stats. For skills, I basically took all the major mage skills, but split them differently between major and minor. I thought about taking the unarmored skill because, you know, mages mages in robes makes sense, but I've always worn at least light armor in other games, so I picked that and decided to deal with the consequences later. I also picked blunt weapons in my minor skills, thinking maybe I'd use a staff. The predefined mage class had short blade instead, which I just couldn't picture. Like a mage with a dagger or short sword? Really? Of course, I also took alchemy and enchantment because come on, what's a mage without those? So in the end, my class was close to the standard mage, just tweaked a bit to fit how I wanted. After that, I picked the mage sign and finally I was ready to start the adventure. Character creation always takes me forever, especially in a game I'm playing for the first time. I want to check every option, every skill, and of course, make my character look at least halfway decent. Did I succeed with the looks? Not sure about that. Anyway, I started poking around the building, curious about what I could find and how the interiors looked. Down in the basement, I found this sad little bedroll on the floor looked miserable. But right next to it were two barrels, probably with wine? Not sure since there were buckets under the cranks and who pours wine into buckets, right? But maybe it helps someone sleep in those conditions. Outside, I found an enchanted ring in a barrel. I was thrilled with that discovery. Little did I know I'd be handing it back to its owner pretty soon. And now that I think about it, maybe that rogue class the quiz gave me wasn't so wrong after all. The very first thing I did in Morrowind was steal a ring from a barrel. Then I checked the map. It was shockingly empty. Just a marker for where I was. Nothing else. Eventually, I found out I was actually released from prison and now I had to deliver a package to a man named Caius Casades in Balmora. What really surprised me was how detailed the directions were. The man didn't just say go to Balmora, he even told me where to ask once I arrived. I also asked about Balmora and the man explained exactly how to get there. I checked my map and yeah, I got some new markers, but there was no compass anywhere. Just this small mini-map in the bottom right corner. I thought, wow, this is going to be tough. But it wasn't my first time with a game like this. Gothic 1 and 2 work the same way, so I wasn't too stressed. I knew I just needed some time to get used to the new world, cities, creatures, how to travel, etc. And that's actually what I love in games. That's when I really get immersed, when I have to think about where to go and how to get there, instead of just blindly following a compass. I checked my journal to see what it looked like and wow, it's a real journal. Pages with written days and notes about what happened. I also quickly realized I didn't want to take a lot of quests at once, since it would be hard to track them all in the journal. But maybe that's better, take one quest, do it, and don't have 50 pending at once. That's definitely more immersive. What's also worth mentioning is that you actually have to read all the dialogues. Sure, it can be a downside, but I'm used to playing games without voice acting, so it didn't bother me. And with that short game intro, I was free to do whatever I wanted. So of course, I didn't rush to Caius Casades. I first had to enjoy my freedom after leaving a prison, right? So I was in the middle of the small town of Seydanin, and of course I decided to explore and talk to the locals. The first NPC I chatted with was Fargoth, and it turned out that the ring I found earlier actually belonged to him. So of course I gave it back. After that I explored the town. One thing that really caught my eye was the pond. I even went inside to check it out, thinking something might be hidden there, but didn't find anything, at least not yet. Besides that, I wanted to see how it looked underwater, and I had no idea that slaughterfish could appear so fast. And let me tell you, they hit hard at the beginning. I didn't survive the encounter, even though I really tried to escape. Talking to everyone was super interesting too. I was especially curious about rumors, advice, and specific places, and it turned out to be really rewarding. One local told me about the Mentor's Ring, which was located in a tomb along the Bitter Coast. Isn't that awesome? You can actually find out about the locations of hidden treasures answers just by listening to townspeople. What was funny is that not that long ago, I also found it in Skyrim while fishing. I remembered it was great for mages since all spells cost 10% less magicka to cast, so I wondered if the one in Morrowind would have the same bonus. Since I was a mage, that treasure info made me even more excited. On top of that, I got a quest to help someone find the money Fargot had been hiding. I got a full step-by-step guide on how to approach it, which was pretty detailed. I was really surprised that I had to watch Fargot from the lighthouse at night to see where he went. Curious, I went there and waited until nightfall. At first, I wondered how I'd recognize him from that distance, but then I saw someone carrying a lantern and I knew it was probably Fargot. He went to a mug pond with a tree stump, and it was kind of funny because I had looked around the area before and somehow didn't check the stump. But still, how cool of a quest is that? I waited until daytime to check the stump, and sure enough, besides the gold, there was also the ring. Poor Fargot, robbed twice. After returning the money, I explored around the lighthouse and noticed something in a tree stump. I tried to jump on it, and after a while, I succeeded. I found an axe. How cool is that? Hidden loot like this is so rewarding. Just a moment later, I had my first fight. I equipped a fire spell and tried it, and it turned out to be a touch spell. Surprisingly powerful. One touch and I defeated a mud crab. But as a mage, I imagined myself fighting from a distance, not risking close encounters with monsters. Another thing that blew my mind was the water walking spell. I mean, it actually lets you walk on water. The game is so old and yet you can do things like that. I thought it would be super useful for finding the tomb with the mentor's ring, because if I had to swim to an island, those slaughterfish would certainly eat me. Before my big trip, I decided to prepare, but on the way to the shop, I stumbled into Fargot. Of course, out of curiosity, I checked if he had anything new to say about the ring or his little hideout, and his answer cracked me up. I don't have a hiding place, at least not anymore. So yeah, he knows someone robbed him. That's actually really cool. One more thing that caught my eye, the height difference between characters. The high elves are massive. Poor Fargot is so tiny, but if you asked him, he'd probably say he's the perfect size. Kind of like Hagrid from Harry Potter. Okay, let's get back to my adventure. I went to a reel, bought some chitin armor pieces. Yeah, don't even get me started on having to buy separate left and right gauntlets and pauldrons. That's insane. And what actually shocked me was that I could wear a cuirass over a shirt I was already wearing. That's wild. Most new games don't let you layer armor like that. Or maybe none of them do. Not that I know every game that's been released lately. I totally love how it works in Morrowind. And not to mention, seeing the differences between armor pieces visually is so impressive for such an old game. Besides the armor, I bought a fireball spell. I really wanted a ranged spell, and now I was ready for my big trip to find the ring. At this point, I had already forgotten about Kaya's Cascades. Who cares about some man when I had such a big map to explore? Anyway, I was ready for an adventure. Equipped with my beautiful new armor, I headed toward the coastline. After defeating a mud crab, I decided to check out the islands nearby. Oh, and did I mention how much I love the water walking spell? Seriously, it's amazing. From the distance, I could already see the entrance to a tomb. I stopped at another island first, then went straight for the one with the entrance. Inside, I had a few fights and eventually found 2 chests. Both were locked, but luckily I had one lockpick I'd taken from Fargot's hideout. No idea why I didn't buy more before heading out. Somehow I hadn't thought about that. At first I had no clue how to even use it, but then I figured it out, and honestly, it's kind of adorable. The game makes you equip a lockpick like a weapon, and each one has its own durability. Plus, it's not a guaranteed success, you just have a chance of opening a lock. I guess that depends on your skills and the type of a lockpick. Mine was called a journeyman's lockpick, lockpick, so apparently there are different tiers of them. That's such a neat detail. They could have just thrown in one generic lockpick, but nope, we get variety. The first chest had a patty soul gem, and the other one? So I opened the chest and it was empty. I was really hoping for the mentor's ring. I left that tomb and quickly spotted another. For some reason, I skipped it and went to a different island first, where I found yet another tomb. I went inside, fought a few monsters, and wow, it wasn't easy. At that point in the game, I had 0 potions. I hadn't bought any, and I don't even think I could have bought many. So I had to be careful and just hope to defeat each creature with a full magicka bar. But when my fatigue was low, my spells kept failing, so it wasn't that easy. After every fight, I just sat around waiting for my bars to refill. I don't know if that's what you do too, but honestly, I had no clue how else to handle it. No potions, plus I don't think I really even had many magicka restoration potions, and I definitely didn't know how to craft them yet. In that tomb, I found another locked chest, but my poor lockpick broke before I could open it. I had only one and wasted it in such a sad way. I was almost sure the mentor's ring was in there, as I tend to be unlucky that way. In that tomb, I also learned that doors can be trapped. Yep, just clicking on one can cause a lot of trouble if you're not careful. This game really has everything. So I circled back to the tomb I skipped earlier. After healing up, this ugly worm popped out of nowhere. It reminded me so much of the giant worm from the old horror game Penumbra, or even Resident Evil Code Veronica. Except way smaller, of course. Okay, I'm sidetracking probably too much. So I searched the tomb and there it was, the mentor's ring. I couldn't believe my luck. It was in an urn, not a locked chest, so I could actually get it. Maybe the devs did that on purpose, knowing new players wouldn't think to buy extra lockpicks on their first adventure. During the next several hours, I noticed the best loot is usually tucked in some weird spot, hidden in a hole in a cave or inside a locked box, never in an urn. Only the mentor's ring was in an urn. Other urns just had bone meal. And yeah, the mentor's ring is amazing for a mage. Super useful. So my expedition was a huge success. To be honest, I love the fact that we can find unique items that don't scale with your level. I know some might say that finding, for example, Daedric armor at the very beginning could be too overpowered, but I see it differently. It actually makes all the adventures more interesting and really makes me want to explore every cave or tomb I stumble upon. You never know, it might be really worth it. I came across so many awesome items during my first 60 hours of playing. Okay, I started rambling too much. Let's return to the story. When I got back to town, I started to notice how slowly my character moves. Just look at that walking animation. At this point, it didn't really bother me. At this point. But later on, it annoyed me so much that I trained athletics a lot and put points into speed almost every level up. Unfortunately, not during these first 10 hours. But now when I play, my character actually walks like this. Just look at the difference. I was supposed to get back to the story. At Ariel's shop, I sold off everything I didn't need, and this time I bought a few lockpicks. While looking around the shop, I noticed something cool, a staff leaning against the wall. Since I was playing a mage, I figured rope and a staff, that's the real wizard look, right? I wasn't sure about the rope since I had picked light armor as a skill, but I wanted to try it anyway. So I bought both the rope and the staff. And here's the crazy part, the staff actually disappeared from the shop when I bought it. That means all the items merchants sell are actually displayed in their shops, not just on some invisible list. Isn't that awesome? In most games you can't even see what they're selling, just the list, but here it's part of the world. Even better, when I put the rope on, it layered over my armor. So now I had both protection and style. Is there even another game that lets you do that? I loved it. My character was probably boiling alive under all that, but looked amazing. Even a guard seemed to notice. And honestly, I can't blame him, just look at me now. Now I'm starting to wonder if I'm going into way too much detail. I've already talked for about 15 minutes and that only covers like 3 hours of my experience. We still have 7 more to go. I definitely need to speed things up. And that was my 10-hour experience. Just kidding, of course. But yeah, I tried to pick up the pace a little. It's just not easy, you know? There are so many awesome mechanics and design details in this game that I want to point out. Looking awesome, I decided to head toward Balmora. But of course, right outside Seydanin, I stumbled across a cavern. Naturally, I had to check it out. After a few battles, I ended up freeing some poor guys who were locked inside. Then I went to see the sealed strider I'd heard in town and could take me to Balmora, so I wanted to see what it looked like. A huge bug with long legs, definitely an interesting sight. From the sealed strider driver, I also found out that not everyone here in Seydanin is happy, which surprised me because to me it looks like such a peaceful, beautiful place. Turns out the guy the driver mentioned came here hoping to make a fortune, but all he got was a cursed ring. It makes you run faster, but also drains your health. I gave him some money and in return, he handed me the ring. Of course, I didn't plan on actually using it. After that, I went back to Ariel to sell my loot from the cave, and here's where it got funny. He straight up refused to talk to me because I had moon sugar in my inventory. Like, what? Can he see through my armor and ropes? Especially since I was layered like a cabbage with all that gear. How do traders in Morrowind actually know I'm carrying skooma or moon sugar? Do they somehow smell it or something? That totally caught me off guard. I felt a little guilty for robbing Fargot earlier, so I thought maybe I'll leave the moon sugar in his hiding spot. I'm sure Fargot would have loved it. Sadly, I couldn't place it in the stump, so I just dropped it nearby. Same with the skooma I had. Once I sold everything, I was ready for Balmora. I healed up, but right after resting, I was suddenly attacked by some guy. Nobody around even tried to help me, but I still made it through. He had better armor than mine, so I took it. I was glad I still had my rope on top though. I didn't want to look like the assassin, which is what he turned out to be. He was sent by the Dark Brotherhood. Oh, and side note, I also bought a skirt earlier and yes, it's tucked under my rope and over my pants. Anyway, I sold off my old gear and rested again, only to get attacked by a worm. Defeated it, healed, rested again, and another ambush. It was a friendly bug, but I didn't know that at the time. Then, when I tried to rest again, another assassin showed up. Honestly, I wasn't even mad because his outfit sold for a ton of gold. But Ariel didn't have enough on him, so for the moment I only sold a few pieces. Finally, I managed to heal in peace and nothing else attacked me. So now, Balmora. I was told to take the sealed strider, but I wanted to explore on foot. I was curious how long it would take if I could navigate using the road signs, and of course, I was hoping for some interesting encounters along the way. Pretty quickly, I found my first signpost pointing toward Balmora, and the landscape was just stunning, giant mushrooms everywhere. I stopped to check out a pond near the road, then another cave. Later on, I met a woman standing by the road. She'd been robbed by a man, but instead of wanting revenge or her stuff back, she told me she'd fallen in love with him and wanted to see him again. Yeah, I wasn't sure that was the best idea. I mean, bandits aren't usually boyfriend material, so for now I left her alone. Further down the road, I found another cave, and that's where I realized again just how awesome this game is. I ran into a trapped door that quickly drained my health when I opened it. I tried jumping around to avoid the trap, but no luck. I know now that you can use a probe for that, but I didn't know it at the time. So I thought thought, what if I heal myself right as I opened the door? It took a few tries because, of course, my spells kept failing, but eventually it worked. The door was open and I was still alive. It might sound like a small thing, but I love how the game lets you find little workarounds like that. It makes everything way more interesting. Okay, enough distractions or I'll never get to Balmora. On the way, I spotted a fort, but I decided to stay focused and just follow the signs. And finally, I made it. Honestly, it was much easier than I expected. The signpost really helped and nothing life-threatening showed up on the road. At first, Balmora felt like one of those cities where I'd have a hard time remembering who lives where the shops are, and where the guilds are. Yeah, I hadn't seen Vivek yet, so what did I know about navigating a complicated city? But actually, Balmora was surprisingly easy to get around. I explored most of the higher parts of the city, checked out shops, wandered through different houses, talked to people, and eventually found the Mages Guild. Since I was playing as a mage, it made total sense to join. I wanted to get stronger and also become more familiar with the world. What completely blew my mind though was discovering that you can actually create spells in this game. I did not expect that at all. Later on, I ended up using it quite a lot, but not during these first 10 hours. I must admit, you can really get creative with spells here. For now though, I left spellcrafting aside and took my first quest from Ajira. She asked me to bring her samples of 4 types of mushrooms. She gave me instructions on where to find them, which was perfect. I wanted to get more familiar with the world and practice navigating without a compass. I followed her instructions but didn't climb over the hills after crossing the bridge. I just stuck to the path. Along the way, I found a woman who needed help. She'd lost her way and wanted to get to the fields of Kumu. Yeah, like I was the perfect person to ask. I had no idea where those fields were, but I figured they had to be somewhere nearby. A bit later, we got attacked and I started wondering, does the woman even have health? Can something happen to her if I'm traveling with her? I had no clue, so I kept moving. Along the way, I found a tomb, but I wanted to keep looking for the place the woman mentioned. As you might guess, I hadn't found it, at least not at this point. I finally decided to look for mushrooms instead, but the woman stayed close. I completely lost her once, but she eventually made her way back to me. While searching, I spotted a wreck, but there wasn't anything exciting to take. When I left, the woman got attacked by slaughterfish in the water. I was worried something might happen to her, so I tried using my spells, but I couldn't do any damage. I even tried underwater. Yeah, I know, it makes no sense, but I tried it anyway. I even grabbed my staff, but of course, all my hits were missing. After a long time, the woman was unfortunately gone, and funny enough, I actually managed to defeat the slaughterfish just after she passed away. I'm honestly surprised because later in the game, I used magic to handle slaughterfish all the time, but here, no idea why I couldn't hit it. Probably I was aiming the wrong way, or the slaughterfish was just a bit too submerged. By the way, when I checked my journal, the game actually reacted to what happened. And check out the note. Now she can be closer to her god. Love the dark humor. I decided to reload the game because I really wanted to help her, but maybe later when I actually knew where the place was. This time I didn't take the quest, I just focused on finding the mushrooms. There were 2 I had trouble with. The rest I had already collected around Seidanin while exploring. But after some time, I finally found them on a tree. Ajira mentioned that they could be found on trees, but I just couldn't spot the right one for quite a while. Okay, so I went back to Balmora using the Seed Strider since the mushrooms were really close to Seidanin. I completed the quest and got the next one. I had to put a fake soul gem into the desk of her competitor. I wasn't sure if I should actually do it, so I checked for other ways. But even Renis told me to go ahead, it was normal. Honestly, I didn't expect that from the Mages Guild, so I quickly slipped the fake soul gem into her desk, and now I'm wondering why I didn't just take the Grand Soul Gem back then. Nobody was watching. No worries though. Hours later, I grabbed it anyway with the telekinesis spell. The variety of spells and spellmaking in Morrowind is just so awesome in so many ways. At this point, I was still a humble beginner member of the guild, trying to do everything properly, so of course I didn't want to steal anything. I got the next quest from Ajira, this time to pick 4 types of flowers. Before I went on the trip, I went to a trader to sell the rest of the gear from the assassin, since I had forgotten to do it earlier. And what I saw totally shocked me. He put on the gear I sold. Isn't that crazy? Even better, the gear wasn't available for sale. Up until that point, everything I sold I could buy again, but not this. Makes sense since they were his clothes now, and I just love those little details the devs put in. Okay, back to the flower quest. I followed the instructions and yeah, I found all the flowers pretty quickly, and on the way I stumbled across the fields of Kumu. I was actually glad I had stopped looking for this place with a woman earlier, because I had been going in a completely different direction. Now I found it by accident. While heading back to Balmora, I noticed something cool. The spells you cast never disappear. Just watch how far they can fly. That's actually so cool. After giving Ajira the flowers, she asked me to bring her a ceramic bowl. I bought one from a trader and gave it to her, but then she told me her reports had been stolen. Of course, that meant I had to find them. I searched around, asked other guild members, and eventually found both scrolls. Out of curiosity, I checked them and just look at what Ajira wrote. Ajira works very hard to go all over Bitter Coast and collect these mushrooms. It was the same in the flower report. This time she collected samples from the dangerous lake Amaya. I had liked Ajira before, but after reading these notes, I totally loved her. Now I could understand the lady who fell in love with the bandit at least a bit. Ajira tricked me, but I wasn't mad. I liked her even more. Okay, so next I decided to explore the higher part of Balmora, since there were still a few places I hadn't visited. I especially liked the Moraktong building. It has such a unique style with that red light. I also stumbled upon a merchant selling clothes and picked up a new robe. Look how stylish it is. Now I really looked like a proper mage. Finally, I decided to find Caius Casades. I went to the corner club like I was instructed and found out where he lives. And if I had known what Caius looked like, he would have been the first person I'd visit when I set foot in Balmora for the first time. Look at those muscles. I delivered a package to him and found out I should follow his orders from now on. I officially joined the Blades. Caius told me I should do some freelance work like quests for the Fighters Guild or Mages Guild. I thought it was just about getting stronger, but I had already done a few quests, so I decided to take his orders anyway. He sent me to a man in the Fighters Guild to ask about the Nerevarine secret cult and the 6th house secret cult. He warned me I would have to do some ugly favors, but it was necessary. Definitely didn't sound too great. So yeah, the first thing I had to do, like Caius said, was a favor for the Fighters Guild. Go to an old Dwemer ruin and find a Dwemer puzzle box. The place was pretty close to Balmora and the instructions made it easy to find, but it turned out I was too weak to defeat the guy on the bridge right before the ruins. I tried a few times, even summoned an ancestral ghost, but eventually I decided to do an easier quest to level up. I was still level 1, so it wasn't a surprise I was weak and I didn't have many strong spells. So, of course, I picked up the next quest from the Mages Guild. Renis gave me a quest to convince the next Elvani to join the Mages Guild. What surprised me was that if he refused, I was supposed to get rid of him. I really didn't know what to think of her. I also got a quest to collect guild dues from a member who hadn't paid in the last 3 years. But I was curious if someone else could give me the other quests, so I ended up teleporting to Aldrun, where Edwina sent me to find a book. She advised me to look for it at a bookseller, so I went outside and wow, I was shocked by the city. Definitely not somewhere I'd want to live. What I love though is that our character actually moves slower when walking against the wind and even tries to shield themselves from the sand with a hand. Such a cool little detail. I explored a few buildings, found a bookseller, and he told me I needed to go to Vivek next. And that's exactly what I did. I used the teleport from the Mages Guild and the city completely overwhelmed me. But you know what? Talk to everyone, talk is cheap. So I found a guy who gave me way more information than I could possibly remember or understand, but after talking to him, I decided to check out the Foreign Quarter Canton. I'd heard, maybe from him, maybe someone else, that this canton had traders. And get this, the guy actually had a boat and could take you to other cantons. How massive is this city that it has its own boat driver inside? So I made my way to the Foreign Quarter Canton. It took me a while to get inside since I was still moving slowly, and I realized just how tricky it is to get around the canton's interiors. It's got so many hallways and floors. Eventually, I found the traders at the top, but none of them sold books. After what felt like forever, I finally found Jobasha and he sold me a copy of the book I needed. I definitely wanted to leave after that, but getting out wasn't easy. When I finally left the building, it was dark, so finding the boat guy was tricky. But then I spotted the sealed strider in the distance and headed there. And honestly, I decided I didn't want to go to Vivek, at least not without the levitation spell. Yeah, that spell made me very curious when I first spotted it, and I could totally picture myself flying between cantons. No way, I'm going back there without it. And actually, those were my first 10 hours in Morrowind. Yeah, I know, I barely scratched the surface during that time. But I really wanted to immerse myself in the game to really understand how it works, notice all the interesting details, mechanics, and appreciate them. So I looked around a lot, explored different places, and talked to many NPCs. Old games can have some seriously epic mechanics, and this one definitely does. The overall climate, the exploration without a compass, figuring out all the directions to get somewhere, it's just amazingly done. I got completely lost in the game, and there is so much more interesting stuff I discovered later while playing. But I saved that for another video. What do you think of Morrowind? Do you enjoy it as much as I do? Hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, thanks for watching.